Hello, welcome to the No Holds Barred Witchcraft podcast. Today we're talking about triple goddesses. So, Chris, who have we got to blame for all this neo-pagan claptrap about Maiden Mother Crone and all that stuff?
Well, I suppose it's Robert Graves, first and foremost, and his bloody white goddess.
And who second?
Oh, Carl Jung, that twat.
Okay. Who do we like more, though?
I suppose Carl Jung can be more useful.
I think we agree on that. So,
he has his moments.
Our idea of the Maiden Mother Crone is 20th century and is adopted by a lot of these
neo-pagans.
Is it the feminazis? Is it all this Wiccan Dianic magic, Wiccan Dianic neo-paganism, where you've got, we're being oppressed by the Yahweh, so let's replace the Yahweh with a goddess, but wait a minute, our goddess is actually three goddesses. So she's 3 times as good. So you can screw your Jesus, and you can screw your Father, definitely, and you can screw your Holy Spirit, because we got 3 goddesses. And what 3 goddesses are they normally? I know Hecate is a very popular one. Diana's another popular one. What's the third most popular one, though? The one that gets relegated to the kind of face at the back, you know, that no one really interacts with.
I don't know who you mean.
Oh, I thought it was Persephone, you see. I thought Persephone was the one that she's technically, they all say she's a triple goddess, blah, 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 but she's the one that no one really bothers to talk about because it's all about Hecate and Diana.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why they make Persephone a triple goddess, to be fair.
It's because it's one of the only names they've heard of.
I suppose. There is that. Yeah, I suppose I don't quite understand the Persephone thing. I suppose you've got I suppose they like her for the symbolism of the Wheel of the Year, I guess. And Mommy Demeter and disappearing and the kind of earth cycle, agricultural stuff, I suppose is where that comes from. But anyway, you wanted me to bitch about Hecate more than anything, I imagine.
No, I wanted you to bitch about Maiden, Mother, and Crone, and how useful an archetype it is, because I think for women, that can be a useful archetype, because you kind of got the idea of your maiden, you going through all your puberty, you're a lovely young woman, going out on the town and that, and then obviously some magic happens and you become a mother, and then the whole mothering archetype and all that, and then eventually you're past it. And you basically use a crone all of a sudden some other piece of magic happens and now you're a crone, right? So I understand this.
Wow.
I understand this, and there is a similar thing,
wow,
which I think we can go into, which happens to the guys as well, the kind of triple I don't know, God, triple thing. You don't hear that talked about that much, but archetypes that people can kind of see, oh yes, I'm definitely in this phase of my life now. So I can understand that from the perspective of mirroring, because we know these neo-pagans love to mirror the cycles. It's all about the cycles with neo-pagans. I remember a time where there was no cycles, but there we go. The cycles, you know, whether it's the seasons are changing or the seasons of your life changing and all that sort of thing, it makes sense. But when it comes to it being the only form of a triple goddess that you hear about, that's what I don't like. I don't like when you say triple goddess and they say Maiden, Mother, Crone. And then you say, no, not that one of the others. And they're like, what? What do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is to dedicate this show to the others. And we're going to ignore this Mother, Maiden, whatever the fuck it is. And we're going to dedicate it to the others. We're also going to dedicate an entire episode to sort of the male mysteries as well. So we'll do a show. How's about this? We'll do a show on triple goddesses that aren't the ones you're used to, the neo-pagan ones today. We'll do a show all dedicated to male mysteries and magic, and a show dedicated to female mysteries and magic. And during the one with the female mysteries and magic, we won't make any references or anything like that to Mother, Maiden, and Crone. We'll instead deal with some slightly more cool archetypes and stuff. So, how do you feel about that, Chris? Can we commit to that?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay. So, on the other triple goddesses then, where should we start on our little rambling?
Well, there's a few. Well, I kind of still want to hit Hecate first, but the main reason for that is
Did she piss you off?
Well, a little bit, but also because obviously talking about it, that's not a Maiden Mother Crone part, which is the fact that actually, yes, she is a triple goddess, but it's a triple aspect goddess, in the same way that you would deal with, say, Santa Muerte, who no one ever deals.
But lots of different moods.
Yeah.
And you got to catch her in the right mood.
You got to catch her in the right mood. What I quite like about when we'll talk about the Dark Mother a little bit more in a minute, is more a case of hitting Hecate first. So with that, there was no Maiden Mother Crone part. There were 3 maidens, and the idea was more about her as a crossroads goddess.
Yeah.
That she was a changing periods, and I've just realised what I just said there. But as in kind of directional. It was about transition, about movement from one aspect, transmutation into another. So she was, part in parcel as a light bringer, but also the one that would take the light away also. And then you had a transitional goddess in the middle, and that's how she would kind of rotate through in these kind of give, take, and transmute. We're all wound up.
She's becoming a goddess, a patron goddess of transgender people. Then, do you think?
Possibly, okay. Because primarily she's what I would call the original crossroads demon. She's the person that you make all sorts of deals with. In some way she kind of is the archetype that becomes Lilith. She is that kind of primeval goddess that was there to transmute change. So I can kind of understand that. Maybe that is why. I couldn't tell you what the actual real reason is, because I didn't realise we'd be talking about that, but actually I might have to come back to that at some point. That is an interesting goddesses practice and trans. Maybe that'd be an interesting one to do in the future.
So if we're sticking with Hecate, because I say Hecate, a lot of people say Hecate with the H, but I've heard that the proper Greek way of saying it is Hecate, and also in Bristol we don't pronounce the H's, so it's always Ari instead of Harry, Hecate instead of Hecate, So what about the origins of Hecate then? Was she always a triple goddess? Where did she come about? Are you putting her as growing up in this universe, or does she predate this universe, Chris?
Oh, is that sharing too much before we get to the Patreon part?
Would you want to leave that for the Patreon part?
We could do, but I suppose it's a tricky one. As a triple goddess, we probably best know her as the Greek goddess. But I don't know. it depends on which Hecate you're dealing with. There are
Well, I
many.
don't want to deal with the social media meme Hecate, because she's quite annoying. She pops up in my
Yeah.
news feed. The
Oh,
goddess
okay.
loves you. Oh,
Oh,
it's a full
okay.
moon, pray to Hecate, you know?
Oh,
I don't want to deal with
yeah.
that version.
That's the triple moon Hecate.
Yeah, triple moon Hecate.
I don't like that I don't like that Hecate. But yeah, you've got the Greek Hecate, and then you've got the Hecate that would be from that other group you like so much, the Mesopotamians,
Oh, God. Do we have to deal with
where
them?
where she's linked with Astarte. But yeah, let's probably not go there during the normal part of the episode. But yeah, it's more about threefoldness,
The
which is
threefold
probably
law, Chris.
no, I
Is
don't
she
mean
the
that.
person that wrote that? I thought it was some Wiccan in the 20th century that came up with that old chest, but I didn't realise it was a Hecate.
No, you're twisting my words again. Threefoldness, that kind of yeah, kind of power of three shit. Not kind in more in a
Oh, charmed.
charmed kind of way, rather than a um a Wiccan way. But what I meant was more a case of it's a sisterhood part between the three aspects. So you could quite easily link Hecate with the other kind of triple goddesses you're used to knowing as three separate lesser goddesses, I guess, like the Moray, the Fates, or the Norns, those kind, or the Nern, however you deal
So
with
the
them.
idea, like in Shakespeare, in Macbeth, you have the three witches, but only one of them really does all the talking. Like in Twilight, you've got Aral and the Volturi, and there's three of them, but one of them's really in charge. One of them does all the talking, innit?
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
okay. So what are the others there for?
The other ones. Oh, there are several groups. If you just deal with the Greek ones, then you've got the Graces or the
Okay.
Charities. Um, you've also got the Horae, which was the seasonal goddesses. They're all about change. They're all about movement and change. But then you've also got ones with there's that triple goddess arrangement with Kali. I can never remember the three though. So
Okay.
it's very much an Eastern concept that made its way this way, and then got watered down each time it got a little bit further to the east, to the west rather.
So why, if we're talking one goddess presenting themselves in different ways, why is that? Because I get with the Santa Muerte, it's the case of, wow, this one can do some real bad stuff, so I need to make sure when I'm calling it, I'm calling it on the good mood one, not the bad mood one. But some of the others I kind of think, well, is the idea of I'm a human and I don't really understand this. Like television over in America, I've noticed. The television over in America, if you're an actor, you're not allowed to be a singer, you know? Whereas in other
Okay.
parts of the world, if you're famous for lots of different things very often. Whereas in America, I noticed they don't like it if you specialize. Sorry, they like you to specialize. So it's kind of the idea of the triple threat. I can sing, and I can dance, and I can act. And they feel like, well, this is real
Okay.
important, so maybe I need to make myself a triple god or a triple goddess to show that I can do these things. Is that something like it? Is it the fact that people struggle to identify with, well, I'm used to just going to one thing, one person or one god or goddess for one thing. So I can't compute that this god goddess can do lots of different things.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. Um, I think also it's a case of when you've got, I suppose from our point of view, as in this point in time, linearly, that you're kind of looking at the fact that they've developed where these sorts of goddesses are ones that become all encompassing because they were shared by multiple tribes, and when tribes then came together, they amalgamated their versions of the goddess or god, in order to give her aspects. So it's almost like it preserves the different versions of that goddess that were there. I'm wondering if a lot of it comes down to that, when a goddess splits herself in order to serve the group separately. I think some parts of it is that.
So we normally...
I was going to say a good example of that is the Morrigan.
Right, okay, yeah, well, we definitely got to go into that then, now you said that name. I was just going to say it's the opposite to how I view it from a linear time perspective, because I always see it as, humans contact something and then that's too complicated, so now we split them out and out and out, like the old eye from Egypt. Like, this is far too much for me to cope with. I'm going to have to split this fucker down. Because that ain't really... Is that a triple goddess thing? How many goddesses are in that eye?
No, but that's
I know it
not...
varies
That's
century to century.
That's back to a sisterhood. Don't be messy with my history, bitch.
Well, I don't know. If you look, it's kind of pushing further and further. There becomes more and more of them as time comes on. And I do think that it's not so much that they're multiplying. I think it's more like we're struggling here. We need to reforge this because it's getting too big. It's getting too big. We need to split this up.
I do agree with what you're saying, but not for the example you just gave. I think that's a really bad example.
I'm struggling to put things into words that people might follow along with, but I might just leave that because I'm not sure how many people are really going to follow along with this anyway.
No, but I kind of get what you're trying to say. What you're trying to say is that when a concept like God becomes too complicated, that they will focus on what that deity can do.
Yeah.
So, for example, a great example of that is probably Aphrodite.
Oh, I knew that name was going to come up some point today.
But that was only just to prove a point with what you're talking about, which is kind of where there are different aspects of Aphrodite that then break away in order for them to focus their idea of who she is. And therefore it has to be broken down because they can't cope with all the variations of her, like all the different aspects too. But that's down to a fact of, like you say, linearly, where you've had a goddess for such a long period of time. So when you're talking about a goddess has been around for so long that she's had all these extra attributes added to her, to the point that they then have to break her down in order for everybody to really take her in. So I can get. I think that's probably a better way to explain what you're talking about than to use the eyes of Ra. Anyway, I'm going to just keep talking to myself because Liam seems to have disappeared. But yeah. So whereas what is the opposite to that for what I was talking about linearly with the Morrigan is more a case of individual tribes having a particular understanding of what that deity can do, and therefore when you later look back and those tribes become a country, they then have to make decisions about who that deity is. And the best way to kind of explain that is to make them a multiple faceted goddess, rather than say this is the right version. Instead they say all the versions exist, and therefore they become this multi-aspect goddess.
Why do they normally settle with 3 then?
An individual.
Because with Santa Marte they've done that. Santa Marte is still quite new. And they've got lots of different colour associations for different things, but they still keep the kind of primary 3. Why do you think the number 3 is so important with all of this?
Well, trinities and triads are always a key part, aren't they? But that's down to our understanding of manifestation and creation.
The triangle of manifestation.
We do far more with the triangle than we've ever done with the circle.
Don't tell the Wiccans that.
Which is why a circle makes no sense, really.
Well, aura. Although technically, if you really look at that, it's a little bit more oval shaped.
Yeah.
but never mind. We better leave that one alone.
Or depending where it comes from, more like a droplet. That kind of, depending on what's happening to where it's coming from, I guess. Mine kind of comes a bit more trapezial.
There was me thinking yours was love egg shaped.
Love egg shaped.
Yeah, New Age love eggs,
Love it.
An egg of light.
I love it.
They always pick egg
with
because
vibrating
eggs are
energy.
Scrambled. And so are most of these New Agers.
Wow.
Their magic's easily scrambled. Their brains are normally scrambled. And, well, we won't even talk about them energetically and emotionally. Instead, let's move on to the Morai.
The Morai. Oh, okay, so you want to talk about the fates. What's nice about the fates is they exist almost everywhere. So you'll find that same kind of storyline is told in all sorts of mythologies. Obviously the Morai, you get the Norns in the Norse pantheon, but there are lots of groups quite like that, where they talk about fate and it being passed between these 3, which I guess is where the convoluted part, concept of the bit that we weren't going to talk about, Maiden Mother Crone, kind of fits in. It's a linear time thing, or a time cycle thing, where they kind of try and break that down, which makes sense because it's spinning. All of them are included with textile references into the creation of a life and a chord, as that kind of concept being kind of dragged out there. But I won't go making it all about textiles again. But you get lots of groups like that, where it's a group of women creating together. The weirder one is when you talk about the Valkyries. They do a similar thing with battle, where they've got men's heads as the weights holding down the threads, and then they use spearheads as the shuttle to weave with. But that's quite cool. But that's for another time. I don't think that has anything really to do with triple goddesses.
So, how might a triple goddess present themselves? Because you've got the idea with the Morai, which is why I wanted to pick up on this, which you said about, well, you can see it mirrored in lots of cultures. Is it because these cultures start interacting with the cogs of the universe, and they happen across this specific energy, and it always presents itself to the human psychology in this way, in this triple aspect? Is that where it comes from? Or do you think it's a case of one culture comes up with something and then a new culture comes along that's a little bit more juvenile and then borrows stuff from the older culture? Or is it a bit of both?
I think it's a bit of both, but that's because, again, I think triangles work for us. Something about how our brain kind of makes sense of things, like 3 or more is kind of the best way of kind of splitting anything. You've got that kind of what is it alliteration, the repetition of 3 words, things like that are, they say, if you want to learn how to do something, do it 3 times. On the 3rd time, it will have committed itself to memory. So you've got that kind of, I don't know, 3 seems to work for a lot of humanity, I think, regardless of how intelligent you are. So I think that kind of computing part of how brain chemistry must record things, I think 3 makes sense to us.
3's normally balanced, but also you've got to normally remember, I think, when dealing with things, that you're actually the 4th. So the triangle that becomes the square, you're the 1 extra that turns the triangle into a square. So with the triangle of manifestation, it's kind of the idea that you've got the 3 pillars, but that you're going to end up being the 4th pillar that makes it all happen. So, with a lot of these things, you can see it in the sacred geometry and that. But again, this show's not really dedicated to sacred geometry, so I don't want to go off too much of a tangent.
See, I don't see things. That's interesting that you go there, because I don't see things in that way. So when I look at things from the 3 points, that 4th point is not a square. To me, it then becomes a pyramid. It's that
I'm thinking of it in terms of
3-dimensional
magic, so general modern occultism. So I'm not talking about ancient occultism. You've got old brain problem.
From
the times of the pyramids, remember? And technically, it depends on the shape and size of the pyramid, because if you've got a square bottom.
No, well, it will have a triangular bottom. This is a prism.
Prism pyramid.
This is a prism pyramid.
And does a prism pyramid make a great prison?
It can do. But my point is, when I talk about it from a magical perspective, I make that for me that's 3, and you make that the transition into the 3-dimensional. So I don't see it that way. But yes, that's because you're talking about modern ceremonial magicians. Wow, how were we almost at the end of the first half?
Because we've been rambling about triple goddesses and that. So we've probably only got time for one more before the end of the basic edition. So what extra triple goddess do you want to talk about? Have they made Bridget a triple goddess yet? Because she'll probably be the next fucker to become one, They love making and forging these triple goddesses these days.
I think in some places she is considered, but I wouldn't allow anybody to deal with Bridget in that way. I think that starts to water some of the deities down. So that's not down to, I don't think that's a case of what we were talking about before, where they have to break them down into smaller chunks. I think that's actually, I can't cope with this, so let's water it down. If there's 3 of them, then I can kind of cope with 1 at a time.
So at the crossroads, Hecate needs to be represented at each of those crossroads. So if you've got the crossroads, obviously you're walking down one road and you meet 3 others, one coming from one direction, one coming from another direction, another coming from another direction. It makes sense, right?
Yeah.
With the perspective of Bridget, what you're talking about is it's one big unit. She's one big unit, Bridget, and you either deal with her or you don't fucking deal with her. Because she's there and she's a coming for you.
Yeah. I don't think Bridget would allow herself to be broken into pieces.
Well, she does allow herself to be, as far as I'm aware, she doesn't eat her tulpa. Unless the one in Glastonbury Goddess Temple isn't juicy enough yet for her to come along and eat it. Maybe it will be eventually, but you know what these neo-pagans are like for making energy, building energy. They're not very good at it. But there we go. We are out of time for the regular edition of the podcast. So goodbye, everyone.